Alright, sorry this is coming in so late. I did not realize that parent night would go on for so long. So, as promised, I'm going to go over our notes from today over drawing the human female form. Now, as before, or if I just did this in later classes and you were not part of those, I'll be using 3 different colors for this. Red for standard muscle, and then any permutations, the fat, I'll mark it either blue or green. Regular labeling will be done with pencil, if I have one. But, anywho, as for before, I am going to just highlight this because I feel it needs to be highlighted. Try and pretend you have an ounce of maturity. This is just science at the end of the day. But Mrs. Scott, this is an art class. Yeah, well, science is a part of everything, just as art is a part of everything. So, starting with our frontal view, I'm going to be using the Roman standard female, and this is where we get our first permutation. Slender lines throughout. See, part of what makes the female form enticing in the first place is that everything is just smaller, lighter, not as thick or muscular as a man's. In fact, as I pointed out in class, if you put your fingers to your neck and raise your head up, a female should not be able to feel a large lump in the neck. That would be the Adam's apple. If you were a girl and have that, you might be a little worried. If you're a boy and don't have it, okay, maybe be very worried. It's not anything huge, but it is just one way to have sexual dimorphism between males and females. Now also notice that I have made the shoulders closer together in this one. That is also quite normal for the female body. Men have more broad shoulders, females have more narrow ones. Is that a universal constant? No, there are also the opposite. I'm just going off of what is general, a standard, what is expected. Now obviously these bodies are not going to represent every female out there. Some can keep this form, some cannot. I'm not here to do body shaming. I ain't got time for it. Now everything still goes as it should. Remember that muscles must taper towards all joints, shoulder, elbow, wrist, sockets, knees, ankles. Also, be sure that you look on Canvas for the notes on drawing hands and feet. They won't be particularly important for tomorrow's lesson, but they will be important for the project. I'm going back up here. Pectorals are still the same because keep in mind we are drawing muscle form first and then getting into what all goes on top. When you get right down to it, all this is just muscle, while all the things that make a female female in terms of aesthetics is made from fat. 1 second. Oh man. Okay. Didn't realize about that. Okay. So, back at it, over the rib cage, and the next thing you're going to notice is the slope in the waist. Generally, females have smaller waist. Obviously, this is not for everyone. There are some people that are larger bodied, some that are small bodied and have even bigger dips. But once again, this is not supposed to be every female in existence represented here. Keep the diamond shape. Now, when we first opened the basic shape skeleton form, I mentioned how the pelvic region for a man is rendered with a pentagon, while with women it's more of a diamond. And this is where that comes in, because this diamond is what informs the hips. Now, not every woman is, of course, hippie. But in this case, we're just going to go for not an ideal. I never want to say the ideal, because everyone's ideal is different. But this is a nice starting point. The next thing you'll notice is here, the thigh gap. Now, this gap is pretty rudimentary. Fashion magazines like to try and point out the thigh gap as something that is either attractive or unattractive, depending on the time of year it's talked about. When I was a kid, thigh gaps were all the thing, and as I grew older, turns out it then switched over to if you have a thigh gap, you don't have enough curve. History is weird that way. We are literally repeating the history right now with everyone's obsession over what is quote-unquote thick. And you're like, Mr. Scott, you don't really sound like this in class. Like, yeah, well, Mr. Scott's a lot more casual in class. All right, once we have our feet down, making sure to thin out around our ankles, since that is a joint, we have our female form. Now, next step we're going to do. Okay, unpaused. All right, so let's get into our profile view. I'm not going to worry about the nose and all that, just with this, since your next project will not require that. Time allowing, I will get into faces, but there's no direct guarantee of that just yet. So once more, I'm keeping that slope. With a chin, you want a gentle curve. Now, that is not to say that there are women that don't have strong chins. It's just going from a usual bone standpoint. Spent some time working in a morgue, long story. All right, make sure you keep that curve in the back, especially here. And that's when we get into the thighs on this side. Now you'll start to see this to be a little more thick on this end because we're looking at from a side view. I'll leave just enough room for the glutes. Shrink down as I get to the knees and really emphasize that calf muscle. And for the other side, same thing. And a neat little trick here to get a little bit of space using these little technical drawings is I am just going to go ahead and once I have that down, I'm going to shade in this leg to give a sense of distance. I'll keep this in mind for your project. Okay, there you have it. Now, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to go ahead and set up my chest render and scale. You notice that my overall lines are not perfectly matching up with the bone, and that's fine. That is some regular corrections that you can do at any time. If you realize that, oh, hey, my bones are a little too wide, maybe I use a circle that I shouldn't have. The thing I'm trying to say here is that you're going to make mistakes in this process. I'm 37, I'm still making mistakes, but mistakes are how you learn. Keep that pectoral going. And though this position seems a little uncomfortable, that is because that's a way to push the chest forward. And finally, my profile view. Don't need to draw the entire thing. Just enough to get the base idea. Okay, so now that we have our front, our profile, and our close-ups, it's time to start adding the fat. Now, the first thing to understand is that when we're dealing with curves, we're not dealing with a lot of muscle. Is muscle involved? Yes. A lot of it, not really. A lot of this is really just fat, because the female form maintains fat far easier than men. And that really is just a function of the whole, having babies thing. If we really boil down humanity to function, women make babies, men provide the means to make the babies. And it will do whatever it can to keep making babies. Why we're created like that, I have no idea. Am I a fan of it? Not really. But it is what it is. So, let's talk about drawing that chest. So, breasts, on the other hand, are just fat. They're kind of like sacs or balloons that hang in place. They go over the muscle. So if you have, say, a very defined pectoral, you could probably just move your chest how you want. If it's not very developed, then there's not a lot supporting your chest. Now, would you notice this if you were small-chested? Probably not. Large chest, maybe a little more so. So first off, you understand that, let's see, here's where we got another color. But generally, here, no. What I've seen a lot of students do is that for some reason they will start their breast up at the collar, and that's really not how that works, I assure you. If anyone has breasts that high up, something is wrong with them, or a doctor really messed up with the plastic surgery. Because they really should be around here. Now, can they extend past this point? Yes. Will they develop past this point? No. They all have to come up around this area here. So, assuming that we're talking about someone of this modest chest here, you can start using thinner lines to come around. And they're not necessarily going to touch. We are assuming that we are not dealing with any sort of bras here. There you go. Zoom in so you can get a better look at that. Now, what if we were dealing with, say, something larger? So let's go back down here. Remember that this is a no. This here is a yes. Everything starts as a slope. Lifts just a little bit and comes right back down. There's a reason why I left all this space here as is. Because just as your pectorals hook up under your arms, the immediate breath. So yeah, if you have any doubt that I do this at school and not at home, well, there you go. Anyway, the reason we leave this space out here is just like how the pectorals hook up under the arm. The skin, the things that tie the breast to the body also line up same way. In which case, it would be like a little line here. This line is going to get longer and deeper as the chest size continues on. So let's say I want to go up a little bit. That means the line is going to extend further. And so on. Getting kind of ridiculous now. But notice how I'm not making them perfect circles. Those don't exist naturally. You're looking at some heavy-duty work here. Now, what happens if we get bigger and bigger? Well, guess what? Now, it's just on the same place, but notice how it's going to start going lower. Now, if you remember our sumo model, I said how fat is very susceptible to gravity. Well, now we have hit that point here. The larger the size, the stronger the gravity. Because breasts are just fat, yeah, gravity is just going to pull them down. This is why bras are actually very important for you boys out there that are like, yeah, no. The reason the bras exist are to give support for situations such as this. And not gonna lie, most of the cosmetic surgeries done on women are not to make these things bigger, but especially if they're already big, is to make them smaller. It is far easier to live a life being more bottom heavy than top heavy, because bottom heavy, thighs, butt, legs, there are a lot of muscles there. There are not too many muscles in the chest area, so it's harder to maintain, harder to work, and more susceptible for gravity and sag. If gravity's not doing it, age will. And I'm not going to go to that point because I'm not expecting you to draw geriatrics. Like I said, work in the morgue, saw corpses. You become desensitized to a lot of things. Yeah, I knew a lot of people back in high school that may have been very, so we say, gifted, and then they get to adulthood, and what the first thing to do with that work insurance is to get a breast reduction, because being unable to walk because back pain, not fun. So going back up here to our renders, I'm just going to use the green again, same place. Always slope. Assume we don't have any support, and slight spread. Basic science. Okay, so now that we've done that on the close-ups, let's go back and look at our main bodies, because now we've already dealt with the top, it's time to deal with the bottom. Now I'm sure any of you have just gone to a Walmart one time or walking by a gym. You'll notice that there are some people that are just a little more rounded in the thigh area. As I said, thick with 3 C's. Now, it does not matter how thick someone goes, unless we are talking about someone who is actually obese. The body is still going to taper thickness. Body still tapers. Let's try to wrap this up before that happens again. The body will still taper towards the joints. So think of it like your Nicki Minaj's, a lot of their women in rap and such, and really whatever culture. This is seen as a very valuable body type. And I mentioned earlier in the video that a lot of what people consider attractive, physically, aesthetically pleasing, is a case of history repeating itself. If you ever go back to really the Renaissance, is a good point, women like, say, Nicki Minaj, I'm drawing a blank on a lot of names here. A lot of these models, like, say, Candace Huffin, Precious Lee, Georgia Pratt, Tara Lynn, Kate Wasley, those more plus sizes, that was actually considered the in thing back during, like, the Renaissance, and even going before that towards the Dark Ages. A lot of that is because the weight was seen as being healthy. If you had money, you could eat, and when everyone else is starving, but you're the only one with any sort of thickness, then that makes you more pleasing to the eye and more promising to have children. Because, again, always comes back to that for some reason. So, yeah, history is just repeating itself, but when I was a kid, the in thing was to not have weight. The in thing was to be as skinny as possible. So, food for thought there. Now, you may have also known people that go a little further. I'm not going to outrageous means here, but you notice how the thigh gap is shrinking as I go along. Well, that is normal as well. The thigh gap really only exists as you are lacking in fat. The more fat you have, the less likely you're going to have that gap. And for those of you looking at your bodies going like, do I have the gap? Well, don't worry about it. You don't need the gap. The gap is not necessary for life. Okay, we're going to apply this over here now. Use a little bit more weight going forward, and then everything happens back here. So there's a first level, and then we go to the second level here. Remember, this is not supposed to be an example of what you should look like. This is just a generalization. Never try to compare yourselves to the drawings, because a drawing will always be better than actual. Okay, sorry for that interruption. It'll probably be instantaneous for y'all. Okay. So we applied our weight there, and then just for the sake of argument, you're there. Notice though I'm not going into any particular details. That's because you are in 8th grade, and even in high school, you're not supposed to get too detailed. I draw nude figures until I was in college, and it is an experience. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I believe that should be enough to get the point across. Now, once again, this can apply across any of the different body types that we went over. The sumo, the Hulk, American Standard, the trucker. The only thing to know is that the more muscle someone has, the less fat they have. The more fat they have, the more likely they are to have these extra curves. Now, it's not to say that all bodybuilding women or all muscular women are small-chested. Some just have that gift, and others buy the gift. But generally, the more muscle they have, the more likely they are to be smaller-chested. But they're also more likely to be thicker down below, because where they don't have fat to cover for it, muscle definition can also make things look more enticing, I guess you can say. That's pretty much it. Let me put in a few more notes here. Let's see. Make sure you have these done as well. The more curve in the thighs, the deeper the dip at the base of the spine. And that is it, yes. Okay, so, backing out, there you have it. So, how are you supposed to practice? Well, if you are a girl, use yourself, use a mother, use your sisters. You know what your body looks like. You should be able to tell what you want to use as a model. Boys, well, you have all the models in the world if you want to draw men. If you want to draw women, I'm not going to advise you look online without safe search. I would hope that you do, but you also have mothers and sisters and aunties. They can pose for you. Once again, we're not getting into any sort of intimate detail because you're all too young for that. And I assure you, if you decide to continue with art and you want that drawing like one of your French girls things like in Titanic, you're going to be sorely disappointed at first. So, along with this video, you'll find the completed drawing here. Tomorrow, we'll be going into clothing. So I will be buying different fabrics for y'all to model in. The formats of the room will be a little bit different. Though they're coming in, the reading of the objective and the bell ringer, that's still going to happen. There will be no time to turn in your work during class. You'll just have to handle that when you get home, when you get to advisory, but you're only going to be turning in 3 assignments. Since we were only here, actually, no, not even that, because we started Wednesday, so you're only turning in 2 assignments. You don't need that much time to turn in 2 drawings. So, with that out of the way, tomorrow clothing, maybe some my fashion, and on Monday we get into your project, where, spoiler alert, You're going to be making clothes for different body types. And before you go like, okay, I'm going to make some just for me, no. It's going to be randomized. Happy drawing?